Coach E here. I'm a physiologist and breathing coach. Today I want to talk to you about a question that one of my clients asked, and they were asking the question, how to improve their endurance training through breathing. So I want to give you some practical ways that you can improve your endurance through better breathing mechanics, habits, and some simple breathing techniques. Let's get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about is your breathing mechanics. Who is more in shape? Somebody who's running down the road like this, or somebody who's running down the road like this. Even just that example, it's pretty safe to see that over breathing is not as efficient as breathing for the body's oxygen needs and breathing slower and more controlled through the nose. So I think we know this, but I think we've gotten maybe in the habit of thinking, hey, when we're training, we need more and more and more oxygen. But the idea of more oxygen or over breathing isn't very helpful for performance. So you're going to take in a lot of oxygen, whether it's by how fast you're breathing, or if you have your mouth open and you're taking it in, not breathing through the nose, which will slow it down. So we know that that will increase your breathing volume, and it will lead to over-breathing, which the extreme end of over-breathing is hyperventilation. And we know that that is not an efficient way to breathe. And although you might not hyperventilate when you are exercising, you are taking in more oxygen than you need, and you are becoming less tolerant to CO2. So when we're looking at changing just small things in our endurance training, the smallest thing you could do that you could start today is to shut your mouth and breathe through the nose. Start to implement nasal breathing as long as you can in your moderate to lower intensity cardiovascular exercise. Then when you start to get in higher intensities, it's gonna be necessary at some point, at some intensity, and that's different depending on how much you've been training. But you're gonna have to start to breathe out of the mouth, and that's okay. But we want to not be breathing out of the mouth at those lower intensities. When we get to a high enough intensity, maybe start to breathe through the nose and out of the mouth versus just panting in and out of the mouth. And again, this is the nasal cavity is what our primary breathing mechanism needs to be, and then our primary breathing muscle needs to be our diaphragm. So shut your mouth, breathe through your nose, and then consider how shallow you are breathing. What I mean by that is your breathing pattern. If you are here, using the shoulders and the neck as your primary breathing muscle when you're cycling or biking or doing any type of endurance sport, then we want to start to utilize our diaphragm. What it tells me, if you're here, moving vertically up on that inhale, it tells me that the diaphragm's moving up on your inhale when it really needs to move down on the inhale if we're using the diaphragm right. So the ribs expand, the belly gets a stretch, the low back gets a stretch, the pelvic floor gets a stretch. On an inhale, you expand out. You don't go inhale, suck in, and draw up. That's a reverse breathing pattern. So first thing, switch to nasal breathing. Second thing, consider your breathing pattern, not just during exercise, but at rest. The 23 or 22 other hours a day that you're not exercising, start to think about how you're breathing throughout the day. That's where you can probably have the biggest gains, the biggest changes, is actually changing some of these daily breathing habits that will transfer over into your performance. So how cool is that? I usually don't even start when people are trying to implement this into their endurance types of exercise. I usually don't start in the exercise itself. We start with the daily habits, because I think you are going to get a lot more gains if you start to tune into your breathing mechanics and habits throughout the day. So at rest, during your ADLs, breathe through your nose, breathe in a 360-degree pattern, inhaling, expanding, using that diaphragm, let it drop down, and then exhale, everything draws in and up naturally. So you get that good breathing pattern. I will teach you a quick exercise using a balloon at the end of this lesson today. So you can maybe take, once you have the breathing pattern down, you can take that into this balloon exercise, which will challenge you a little bit more, and it's great to implement before you start exercising. So we'll get into that. So now that you have your nasal breathing down, you have your breathing pattern down, I want to talk a little bit more about over-breathing. Over-breathing is taking in too much oxygen. What we need to do is breathe slower so we become more tolerant to CO2. And another example would be this. Who's going to be more fit? Is it going to be the swimmer who can stay under longer, or the swimmer who has to take a couple strokes and then come back up for air? Obviously, breathing in a breath hold, having a good CO2 tolerance, is going to translate to the more fit athlete. So when we're starting to implement, once we get our breathing mechanics and our patterns down, we can start to implement some of these breathing techniques. Again, not usually while you're training, but as an addition exercise you can do throughout the day. This will help actually lower your stress. So oxidative stress you can get from exercise, just stress from daily living. The technique we use is a breath hold technique. I call it box breathing. It's been around for a long time. I think it was really popularized by a Navy SEAL. So it would be an inhale for 4, a hold your breath for 4, exhale for 4, hold your breath for 4. And as you start to get more comfortable breathing in the correct pattern while you're doing this box breathing, you will be able to hold your breath longer. This will translate to better performance. When you are over breathing, you're definitely activating the sympathetic nervous system, which is probably already activated because you're exercising. But you might be also activating it to a point where you're getting that vasoconstriction. So the blood vessels are constricting as we overbreathe and overbreathe. And an extreme example of overbreathing is panic attacks, hyperventilation. So we want to be mindful about when we're exercising that we're taking in the right amount of oxygen for the amount of activity we're doing. Because sometimes we just tend to get in that idea of, I need more oxygen, when actually we need less. So we need to breathe slower, longer breaths, like longer exhales, and not be pulling in too much oxygen for a simple jog. All right, so that will translate to, I think, really what the goal is to have more oxygen sent throughout the body. And if you are over breathing and you have that vasoconstriction, that's not going to be good for oxygen exchange. It's not going to be as helpful. So we have to work on that better breathing pattern. Start slow, start small. Here's a couple exercises. So if you don't have a balloon, you could mess with this and play with this activity a little bit, would make a straw, but the balloon is going to create a unique amount of resistance. They have breathing trainers you can buy on Amazon, but I just find that this is easier for me. And so I'll teach you this. What we'll be doing is we'll inhale through the nose and you'll actually be exhaling out of the mouth. When you inhale, work on that diaphragmatic breathing pattern, that 360-degree expansion. And then when you exhale, feel that natural drawing in. Start to take maybe a 2 to 3 second inhale followed by a much longer exhale. So we're lengthening out our exhales. Then I'll teach you box breathing, and that will be where I want you to start. So let's get started on our breathing with the balloon. We'll lay down. I like to lay down. You can sit up doing this, but I like to lay down. Inhale through the nose, exhale, everything draws in. I'll do a couple and then I'll cue a couple. So you might be able to get like 3 good breaths, and then my favorite part. All right, so it's inhale, 360-degree expansion. Feel the stretch all over, fill up, and then exhale, draw in from the pelvic floor first, and then everything kind of pulls in. Really go to the end of your breath on that exhale. So we're starting to lengthen the exhale. So now we're going to go into box breathing. So from here, it'll be an inhale for 4, hold your breath for 4, exhale for 4, hold your breath for 4. Let's try it together. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold your breath. 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. Inhale, feel that 360-degree expansion. Hold your breath. Getting comfortable with holding our breath. Exhale slowly, everything draws in. Shoulders are relaxed. Hold your breath. Let's do one more with a good breathing pattern. Inhale, fill, intra-abdominal pressure, hold the breath. Exhale, nice and slow. And hold the breath at the bottom of the exhale. And relax. This is something you could do as a cool down at the end of your exercise, and you could do the balloon breathing as a warm-up. That could be good ways to start to implement this into your exercise. But again, it's your daily breathing habits that you'll have the most gains when we're talking about endurance. So remember to breathe through the nose, breathe in the correct pattern, 360 degrees, breathe low and slow, slower breaths. So lengthening that exhale, not over breathing throughout the day. I hope you found that helpful. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. If you do start to implement some of these things, let me know if they're helping you, if you're noticing that you're able to breathe more controlled when you're on your runs or you're cycling, or even if you're swimming or whatever type of endurance exercise you're doing. So I hope that was helpful. Have a great day and thank you. Bye.